Hi everyone, I'm Jen Walton-Fassett. I'm a professor of physical education, teacher education at Kent State University.
Hi everybody, my name is Tammy Weinerd. I am a department chair and assistant professor of health sciences at North Central College in Naperville, Illinois. And I'm also the program director of a graduate online certificate in trauma-informed educational practices.
So Tammy and I, along with some of our other colleagues, just submitted a feature series for JOPR that just came out for the November-December issue, focusing on trauma-informed practices. And across the articles, we had an introduction article that really focused on social justice and equity and just really framing trauma-informed practices in general across education. We focused on K-12 physical education, K-12 health, and also physical education, teacher education, and health education, teacher education. And we concluded with restorative practices. We recommend that you go to the feature series. If you would like to have more information about each of these, we're going to be doing 4 critical conversations, and this will be the very first one to kick off. And so we'll start there.
Can you go to the second slide, please? So the first article that Jen and I are talking about today is for those of us who are preparing the future physical and health education professionals. And Jen's going to talk a little bit about PE, and then I'll talk about health.
So we don't want to get into too many details for the article because we'd like you to read it, but some things that we talked about when it comes to physical education was focusing on connecting with students through the use of circles, getting PE students to explore their systems of meaning, ultimately who they are, and their social identities. We provide numerous examples of engaging in trauma-informed practices and activities that you can do with your pre-service teachers. And then we talk about how programmatically you can move from a trauma-informed to a trauma-invested program.
And those of us that collaborated for the health education component talks about including adversity education in the health education teacher education program, and we provide many resources and kind of how-to steps to go about that. We have lesson plans for HETE faculty members on how to introduce this and teach it with their students, and then also ideas for pre-service health educators on how to then carry it through in the health education classroom in K-12 as well. We are going to transition now to going through a few questions just to kind of this feature series and why those of us that teach in PETE and HETE think that this is so imperative right now in our program. So Jen, can you tell me how you first learned about childhood adversity and trauma-informed practices?
Sure. I didn't say this, but I'm also the director of teacher education at Kent State. And so 4 years ago, we went to our state teacher education conference, and one of our senators of the state was talking about trauma-informed practices, and really was the focus of the conference. And to be honest, I hadn't really thought about that before as a PETE faculty member. And so that's when I started really investigating what it was and how I could prepare my pre-service teachers, but also my colleagues across all teacher education programs on what trauma-informed practices even are. And so that was my initial start to it. And then I had to go and actually get educated with K-12 teachers because there was no professional development for higher ed faculty to become a trainer of trainers. And that's where 4 years ago, where my work in this area has started. How about for you?
So for me, I've been a health educator in school and public health for almost 25 years. And 8 years ago, I was attending a professional development opportunity, not for work, but because my family and I are licensed foster care. And in that training, I heard about childhood adversity and trauma and the direct impact on growth and development and changing brain and body and impacting learning especially. And I was surprised, especially working in public health for so long, that I had not come across any of this information. And since that time, it has changed everything in how I interact with preparing future educators, preparing future healthcare workers, and then just interacting with other people. And of course, as you mentioned, talking to and spreading the word amongst faculty as well, and inclusion of this in our field too. So the second question is, why is becoming a trauma-informed professor for physical education teacher educator so critical?
Well, as teacher educators, we focus on best practice, and that's pervasive. And when you focus on trauma-informed practices, trauma-invested practices, it really is best practice for all students, not just those that experience trauma. Also, my research and my personal and professional expertise areas on social justice. And when you look at social justice issues and trauma-informed practices, it really is about meeting the needs of our students, of the K through 12 students, just showing an ethic of care and understanding of what they're going through, the traumas that they have experienced, whether that's inside of school or outside of school. And for many of our students, they may not never experienced any of these things or had any negative issues in school or in physical education, particular to what I'm training for. And so we need to best inform them about these practices. But to me, it is a way of being. It is part of a teacher identity. It is not just an add-on to where, you know, some programs might consider that. And so I believe that if we're really focusing on best practice, then we're focusing on best practice that's trauma-informed and socially just and equitable. How about for you?
Yeah, so I'm just going to say ditto. No, I think that it's really just, this is essential for all educators, but specifically for health education. And I have taught middle and high school health education. I've prepared health educators. I've worked in public health. We do not shy away from teaching about sensitive topics. And so when you look at the impact of adverse childhood experiences and other forms of trauma events that are beyond just neglect and abuse, which people typically think of, there's such a wider variety of definition. It would be irresponsible to not talk about ACEs and other childhood community events and preparing our future health education teachers in how to then turn around and teach it themselves. But I will say my research area has been in the last 3 years identifying the gaps in faculty and in pre-service professional prep programs because of the self-directed nature that we that are teaching it have had to go on. And so with this feature series, we're really providing specifically in this article, here are the tools that you as a HETE professor can use to increase your own skill set and knowledge. But then here are also tools on how you can teach it to pre-service educators. And when I've worked with other health education teachers currently in the system, and then future educators, there's always a parallel between learning about this as a professional, but also learning about this as a person. And I think that, you know, there's triggers that come up when you're hearing about the impacts of this on the developing brain and body and the impact on learning. We so clearly relate to disability and death in health education. We cannot not teach about adversity and resilience and the impact that this has on all the different topics that we talk about in health education and the content. And so we really want to empower those of you that are preparing PETE and health education teacher educators to recognize the need for this moving forward, because we are at this tipping point right now as a society looking at all these different ways to become trauma informed, and it is best practice. And so we'll be seeing more of it, and there are many, many resources out there to improve our competency and to share together as well.
Tammy made some really excellent points, and although this article really focuses on PETE HETE, when we're talking about these critical conversations that we want to have, we certainly invite K through 12 health and PE teachers to come aboard, because ultimately we're preparing them to work in your schools, and having your voice and perspective would be really important as well. And Tammy brought up some key terms: ACEs, resiliency, triggers, a lot of things that we would like to talk about that we certainly discuss in our feature series and would like to continue in our critical conversation. So for our PETE HETE critical conversation, we're holding that on January 12th, 2021. And it'll be from 5 to 6 p.m. That's Eastern Standing Time. There will be an invite that goes out where you can sign up for this, that comes through SHAPE. But again, we also want to invite you to the actual Jopert article that came out specifically on this topic. You'll see the volume and issue number below and the DOI where you can go get that directly linked. We thank you so much and look forward to having further conversations with you.